Thanks for coming in.
Yep. Sure.
Yeah, it's
So,
this is Ron McIntyre, or Ron Chambers.
Chambers, yeah.
Yeah. If you want to just introduce yourself.
Pardon?
Can you just introduce yourself?
Ron Chambers, from Hayes Junction, Champaign Eject First Nations.
Mm-hmm.
Alternate elder for CYFN.
Oh, okay.
And
Have you been involved in politics your whole life?
I was deputy chief for a while
Yeah.
with Champaign Eject,
Good.
back during the land claims negotiations and stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, mine is the second signature on the first land claims agreement.
Wow.
Paul Burko was chief and I was deputy chief.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Been involved for a while. That's 20-some years ago now.
Trailblazers, eh?
It turns out to be, isn't it? You know, you never know that when you're doing things. And you look back in history and you realize, hey, you know, we were involved in that. So, yeah. As a matter of fact, before that, I worked for Yukon Native Brotherhood quite a bit prior to that.
Yeah.
When they were first getting started. Yeah. So, with Elijah Smith. Yeah. So I go back quite a ways on this, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's history. And it's still being created, of course.
Yeah.
And the people today are creating history as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like you guys started to meet the trail and then.
Kind of trailblazer from where we were in the past. You know, people didn't seem to give us much opportunity to go anywhere as such, and we didn't think too much on it ourselves. And then once Elijah got it started, you know, started bringing people in to work with him, and next thing it just took off, and it was something people been waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know what, but it seemed to happen because that's what's going on today.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to be there back at that time because you can make a comparison.
Yeah.
I think what's really important is that you do have a comparison. If you don't have a comparison point, you don't know if you're achieving anything.
Right.
Looking back at what we didn't have way back compared to what we have today, we've achieved a hell of a lot in spite of what people might think. So that's important. History is important. It shows how far you've moved and, you know, from where we were. And then prior to that, I was also 7 years in mission school. So I know something about that as well. So that's where I think I fit in a situation where I can see this going across where we are today. So
You went to the White Horse Baptist Mission School.
I was at the White Horse Baptist Mission School for 7 years, and then I was in a Catholic mission school in Skagway for 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had a little bit of, so it was 8 years altogether. Yeah.
How do you think that affected you in your life?
Well, it made it pretty tough when I was young because you got to develop confidence somewhere to keep moving. But I think luck played a big role in what, you know, how I survived. Not everybody has luck behind them all the time, and so I was able to keep moving, and there was people who helped me along the way. So again, like I say, this is luck because there's certain people who did help a lot, and I was able to hang in there. But you know, right after the mission schools, you don't have a lot of confidence in yourself to be able to do things, so it takes a while to build it. It's taken me a lifetime, but on the other hand, because I've been involved with First Nations, you know, governments and whatnot, I've obviously built some confidence.
Yeah.
But one of the big things, which I think is really important, is I learned quite a bit about my culture, and that gave me the drive to, you know, to try and do things.
Yeah.
Success has to be decided by somebody else, but on the other hand, it motivated me, so I'm still involved.
It's really, I'm glad you said that because, you know, when you're in residential school for that long and you're growing up in that you're disconnected from your culture and identity, and then you finally visit it later and it really teaches you and grounds you. And
that shows that some of the elders back when their culture was being suppressed, still maintained enough to give people like myself something. If it was totally taken away, say for example, I don't know if I'd be here today in that aspect. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So many of our people had to hide their culture and then they brought it out later. Same as language. People who speak language now, back in the 50s and 60s, they only spoke amongst themselves because they didn't dare speak it around to other people because they weren't, you know, it wasn't really acceptable by, you know, the people around the government and all that.
Yeah.
So people had to speak it at home to themselves, and they still did it, and they maintained it, and so today we have that. So we do have to give those very old elders credit for hanging on to something that the whole country was seemed to be against them on. So, you know, today we think it's a great thing. But back then, some of those people didn't get credit for that. It is showing up today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What part of your culture do you really connect with?
Well, I found, I guess, I don't know, you don't know when it comes, but art is kind of, I do some carving and done some paintings and some stonework and woodwork, and so my art was part of my culture, but my culture is part of my art, so it was kind of both, and I guess that helped me develop it as well. So I guess I was kind of, I don't know where art comes from, it's part of you, you know, but my culture helped me bring it out. And so now I went to school in Alaska for my years of high school. I got relatives in Alaska, Park Tlingit and Southern Shoshone, and in Alaska they had a group called Chilkat Dancers, which they started back when I was there. I was one of the original dancers, and from there we started carving, and ever since then, you know, I'll have to catch this. Hello. Hey.
So you're
Yeah. So is that the kind of type of thing you wanted to hear in the interview? Yeah.
So you're at the Chilliwack. You're in Alaska, going to school, you said?
I graduated in high school in Alaska, actually. That was interesting because in the school I went to, it was a small high school there, but it was 100% graduation, First Nations and non-First Nations there. And it showed me that with the right circumstances and with people behind you, everybody can do it. See what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'd stayed in the Yukon, you know, I'm positive I wouldn't have continued on, because everybody that I grew up with and everything, none of them graduated high school, went beyond high school. Most of them never went even to high school in some cases, because once you go to mission school, why do you want to go to another school?
Yeah.
That's the part I don't even understand. I don't know how come I ended up hanging in there like that, because you know, I sure didn't have an idea of school, you know. But it's one of those things where the environment around you is so important. And down there, everybody, like you said, it was 100% graduation in the 3 years I was down there going to school. First Nations, and then there's about 50% of students were First Nations, and they all graduated.
Wow.
So then I didn't want to be the only guy that couldn't hang in there. See what I mean? See how it was 360? We're here in the Yukon, it was the other way around. And of course, coming out of mission school, why would you go another day of school? Because that's what school meant.
Yeah.
Down there, I learned that that's not exactly what school meant. School meant other things, you know. So that's luck. I happened to end up down there. You know, I didn't think I was so lucky at the time, but looking back at it, it was lucky I went there, because I have no idea where I'd be today if I didn't go there. So it's those kind of things. So that's why I believe so strong in today of cultural and, you know, our people being behind our young people to see that they go together. And I see our graduation classes, you know, I mean, huge groups of graduation. 30, 40 years ago, you couldn't believe that many students, First Nations, would graduate from anything. not that they weren't smart enough, it's just that they just weren't, well, they weren't considered smart enough either. That's the other thing a lot of people don't realize. We ourselves didn't realize, because we didn't have opportunities to show how smart we really were. People thought we're smart in the bush, but that's because we lived there. But they didn't see us as smart somewhere else. So they often didn't hire First Nations for a lot of jobs and all this kind of stuff. And today, our people are doing as much and more than other people are, so they've always had the smarts, they just didn't have the opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's the way I've seen things, But I go back far enough to realize that. So I believe our young people shouldn't take themselves for granted. They're smart, they just need to put it out there.
Do you have kids?
Yeah, I have three, I have a son and 2 daughters,
Nice.
so.
And grandkids?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's kind of pretty slow in that business because I have a 2-year-old granddaughter and I'm 73. That's waiting a long time, isn't it? So everybody else says, oh, I got great grandchildren. Yeah, well.
Do you think that's because it's we are just a change? Like we're not having babies as young as we used to, and we're more career, going to school, getting a career.
Absolutely. That's the other part. That's the other part of self-confidence too, is you can decide for yourself when you're gonna make your family, not circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
You can create your own. And my kid's an example of that. They're now deciding they wanna get into family. I have a grandson now. He's only a little over 6 months old, so I have a granddaughter and a grandson. But my two different kids. But, that's important, because, many of our people have got into families in spite of themselves, you know what I mean? And maybe weren't ready, and that's been a problem too. But now they're more decisive in when they want and all that type of thing, so that to me is important. Yeah, that's all part of what's come confidence. Yeah. And all 3 of my kids have First Nation names, which you'd almost never done back in the 50s and 60s. It just was not, acknowledged very well. Although I had an aunt by the name of Klawani, and my oldest sister's name is Klawani, and my eldest daughter's middle name is Klawani. So, it's been in the family, but a lot of families just didn't do that.
What does Kluani mean?
Tlu is fish. Kluani is like a place of fish or big fish, that kind of thing.
And there's big fish there.
Yep.
Okay.
So my son's name is Martin Unchia. That's how you say Martin in Northern Shoshone, son's Shoshone. And Jessie drove from Burwash to call her Aunt Jessie, gave me that name for him when he was born, which was never done way back. Just couldn't have done it, but I feel it's important to do. And then my eldest daughter is Robin, is Chusi, so that's her name there, is Robin Chambers, and so she has this Robin Klawani, and so she has 2 first name and second name is First Nation, like in the name. And my youngest daughter is Tinna, the coppers that you see around?
Mm-hmm.
Coppers, right? Well, her name is Tinna. Everybody calls her Tina, but Tinna is her name. So it's a name that gives them the cultural background that they've inherited, and it's names that is very important to our culture. So your name is your culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is with all over the world. Your name is your culture. But we had another culture giving us all these other names, wouldn't use ours. So we're starting to do that as well. Now you hear people introducing themselves and giving their First Nation names, and some of them have been given just in the last few years. That would never happen in the 50s and 60s. There's no way. And that's something that's come with where we are today.
And you were born, and what years were you born?
Yeah, born in 1943.
So you lived through all that.
Yep.
You see all the changes.
In talking to people in communication, I find that having that history is really neat. You know, I mean, because I'm talking to you about it. But on the other hand, I don't like to be the age I am in that side of it because, you know, I mean, I'm getting up there now. But on the other hand, by having that history, I can talk about it today and see the comparison. So that has a value, and to me that's important because, you know, it was pretty negative way back, pretty negative. People who lived right out in the bush and trapped and did their thing out there, they actually did pretty good. As long as people left them, government and whatnot left them alone. But it didn't always happen like that. And of course, alcoholism and all that was all part of the picture too. So when you're depressed, you know, you're susceptible to a lot of things then. And that's been the history of First Nations too. But I see today, young people today can go out and, you know, attend anything they want and sit down and be part of the social package and sit with anybody in today's context, on the government, wherever. That's something. And then a lot of people don't realize is that up until, I don't remember what the dates are, around the 60s, we couldn't vote. That's unbelievable. You can't vote in your own country, you know. I mean, we're the original people of the country, and we couldn't even vote in our own country. I think we need to get our history out a little bit more to the young people so they can appreciate where they are.
And the way we did things back then, it was, I'm pretty sure it wasn't as controversial as it is today. Like I was canvassing for the last election, and all the parties are just so negative against each other, or
Yeah.
it's very, and maybe that's politics, but I don't know if that's traditionally how we.
No, what you're saying is something that bothers me about today's type of politics because they always got to bring the negative to each other, right? And I actually ran for MLA one time out of Hayes Junction country, and with the NDP when Tony Pennicott and those guys were in, and that was the part that I didn't like about it, was that negative side. And at the time I ran against Bill Brewster, and I've known Bill since I was quite young, so I couldn't just go out there and say, oh, he's this and that, you know, I stayed away from it. And he pretty well did too. We didn't kind of go after each other. It was just whatever we can try and do for people. So that was the part I didn't like, and that's too bad because it seems to be what people are doing today. And that's not First Nation way. It's not really. So that part of it, you know, when we have chiefs running against each other, they don't get into too much of that. You know, they really don't. So we're still not really doing that. And I hope we really don't, because I think we're all trying to do the right thing. And that negative part of the party is the parts I don't look at. Because it's not our culture. And that part I'm not too keen on. Yeah.
But now it's different because we also have our own self-government First Nations, right?
Yeah, so then with our own self-governments, then we find that we have to kind of, you know, take on, but we do it in a bit of a different way too. It's not just bad-mouthing thing. We look at programs that are out there and say, oh, this doesn't really fit us, which is critiques, but it's not criticism in a personal way. It's a critique of what's being done.
Yeah.
That's different, I think. So there's nothing saying that, you know, the bridge is not a good bridge. But it doesn't mean you have to go call the people down who live around the bridge or have something to do with the bridge. You can still say that the bridge maybe has some weak points or something. That I think is the way First Nations generally look at it. But we still have a bit of adversarial with Indian Affairs and some government because we're still fighting the fight to a degree.
Yeah. So in terms of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they have the 94 calls to action now. I was just wondering what reconciliation means to you.
Well, the biggest value I think reconciliation has done is when the Prime Minister of Canada made a public apology. To me, then it said that the top of Canada has recognized this. You know, that's way better than, say, an agency or anything else. When the Prime Minister of the country says that, then I say somebody got the message through to him, and it's been acknowledged. Now, how much comes behind that and what comes with it, well, that still has to be decided yet. You know, it's still happening, right? But you gotta start somewhere, and to me, an apology is the one thing. You can't take back what happened in many cases, and in many cases, even with the benefits that came to some of the people, you know, they got some monetary things because of, you know, they were mistreated or abused. Well, it doesn't give back the abuse, you know. It can help with the future of some of those people. The only thing is that the Domestic Canada realize that this has happened. If they don't recognize it, then you can't change nothing. And our own people have to be aware of it too. I think we get pretty busy on ourselves. And, you know, to me, I see some of the First Nation governments and we get pretty bureaucratic ourselves. So we have to watch that we don't lose the message either. And, you know, so that's pretty, so I think there's reconciliation is really important for us to have that. It's a tool for us to use. You know, take the negative and try and make a positive with it. And that's pretty negative. But to me, I believe in what we're doing today. You know, we got some beautiful offices and the stuff we're doing and the work and, you know, and what's happening today around. And sure, it's not the end of the road for sure, but boy, we moved a long way in a short time. That shows the power of our people.
And you look at Canada, it's gonna be 150 years old next year. It's not very old.
No, not very old at all. No, some of our elders are just after that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
so.
yeah, so that's pretty darn young. So we've done a lot of living in a short time, the First Nations. You know, we really have. We've come a long way in a short time. And we've gone through a lot in a short time too. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I've gone through some stuff pretty fast, but that's what's in my head. That's what I'm thinking. You know, that's how I see it. You know, so.
And you still know your language?
I don't have as much as I'd like to. My dad used to be a speaker, but of course, my mother and father were separated when I was quite young. My mother was on the trap line. That's kind of why I ended up in the trap line mission school. And you know, so.
But you know some songs?
Yeah, I do. I sing some songs. I perform. I have a what do you call it, regalia, headdress, and I've actually, and this is really important message as well, is that my cultural side, which is my performance and my dance, because of it, I've gone to Europe, I've been to Japan, I've been to Taiwan, I've been to the States, I've been to parts of Canada, you know, all because of my culture, not because of me, just, you know, Ron Chambers. It's the image I'm putting out as a First Nation background person. That's what's taken me there. So that's important for our people to know. And parts of the world like who we are. You know, they really do. And that's why our performances are so strong. I mean, you get the group, you know, from Carcross and Teslin and the different dance groups around the Yukon. People come to see them. Well, imagine that. Back in the 50s and 60s, nobody came to see us do anything. And those, when we had the real performers, I mean, those were the people that we've learned from. And only saw them at the potlatches. Well, you see how important it is if you get your culture out and you build on it. They're the big things happening in the Yukon.
How does it feel when you put on your regalia?
Pardon?
How does it feel when you put on your regalia?
It feels really powerful because you become somebody else. You know, I'm not just me when I put it on.
Your
I'm representing. Eh?
Do you feel like it's part of your ancestors?
Yeah, you're representing. You want to do the best you can when you put that on, no matter what. And it really does. It really transforms you. And one time I was on a trip to Alaska, and I took my regalia with me and was traveling with a group of people, tourists, some from China and different places. I was involved with the tourism, First Nation tourism for a number of years. And anyway, we traveled throughout Alaska, and I had my regalia with me. And then this one night one day we had a supper at the cultural center out of Anchorage, which is a big place. And they said, well, if there's anybody got any performance or anything, come on up. It's open stage, you can come on up. So I talked to them and I said, well, can I do a song and dance for the people I've been traveling with? They said, yeah, sure. They welcomed it. So I went in, I put my regalia on and did a couple of songs and drum and went back, changed my clothes, came back, sat down, and the people who were sitting at the table said, oh, you missed that guy up there. They couldn't recognize me, that's what I mean. I became the performer, see? So even it was me, even though I had headdress and everything, but my face wasn't totally hidden or anything. Then they got a little suspicious after, and they kind of said, well, is that you? But see, at first, so that's kind of the thing is, the performance becomes everything because I'm representing my culture. And that's what any of the performers, I'm pretty certain they'll tell you that. That's what's so important to them, is they're putting themselves out. The person that's doing it is the one who's taking it in and putting it back out. And that's how strong culture is. Because even though when I got out of the mission school, I was a very shy person. I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you like I'm doing now. This comes with years. But we never talked to hardly anybody when we came out of the mission school. We had kind of a mixed language. We spoke amongst ourselves. It wasn't full language, but we had kind of mixed up English in there amongst ourselves. So we didn't say much. But as time went by, and you start developing this feeling that you have to get your message out, then I got so that I could speak out more, and it became really important. And so now I've been involved in a number of things where talking to big audiences and stuff like that. But when I was young, you couldn't get me in front of anybody.
Yeah.
And that's transformation. And that's how strong culture is. So.
Did you guys have a family did you make a family in residential school, mission school?
I have relatives in there, but.
But as friends, did you kind of support each other? Or?
Well, it was hard to develop real relationships there because you're so regimented. Right. I get two older sisters, and they both went there for a period of time, short time, but they were there. I would see them at lunchtime, and I'd wave like that, and wave at them, and that's it. I never got to talk to them, even though we were in the same place. I could never walk over and start talking to them because the boys is mixed with the girls. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't let us communicate to each other at all. And they were in different classes than I was because we had school in there too. We didn't leave for class. We didn't go downtown. We stayed inside there all the time, 7 days a week for 9 months. So I would see my sisters and just wave at them. So I couldn't even develop that relationship with my sisters, even though they lived in the same compound. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else to use the term, but in the same place.
Did you connect with them later, or was it hard for you to build a relationship with them after that?
Well, when I got out of mission school and after I went to school in Alaska and stuff, see, they went and had, we got together later. We communicate a lot now, and they go out, we sometimes, been hunting together and do stuff together now, but we weren't together when we were kids, except during the summer, during summer holidays, and we'd go with my mother. She was fishing, she fished in the summertime for dogs and stuff, because we had dog teams. And so then sometimes we'd spend some time together, but we didn't have a lot of time together growing up in reality. We're closer now, but back then is when usually family is together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't, we were separated, so yeah, that made it difficult. Yeah.
Really, I'm really thankful for that you are sharing your story, and it's just as an example of how, you're not struggling today, and a lot of people still are struggling from their experience.
Yeah, and anything I can do to encourage them and help them, that's why I'm speaking now too, if there's some way that it helps them. And like I say, there is circumstance. I mean, I can't say that I'm the only, brought myself up with that. Like I say, there's a lot of luck involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of other people too, that help you along the way. So you gotta be receptive to help as well. But, so there is that. I consider myself pretty lucky, in a variety of ways. The other part is, bad luck, good luck, but bad luck was in the mission school, was in the Yukon in the mission school, but good luck goes in the Yukon. Because things in the Yukon get you involved. I'm pretty sure, I know there's some people down, other parts of Canada, things haven't changed a lot for them. Some people on the reserve still got that smaller world to deal with yet, eh?
Mm-hmm.
We're here in the Yukon, as a matter of fact, you gotta turn down involvement sometimes, cause I'm on a number of boards and committees, right? But that's a change, that's a big change, see, so, I think that's important, that's really important. And we can't take ourselves for granted, we still got a lot of work to do, but on the other hand, I think we've come a long way, and the fact I'm sitting here talking about this right now shows how far we've come, because this would never have happened back in the 50s and 60s, so.
Thank you.
Good as cheese for
Showing you
being
that.
interested.
Yes.
Yep. Anyway, that's pretty fast, but